A lone prince bleeds out in the frozen Altai snow. 10,000 warriors. You have been told the gray wolf is just a myth. But ancient inscriptions reveal a terrifying. This is the brutal. The boy's limbs had been severed by the cold steel of the Linyi, leaving him to bleed out in the reeds while the smoke of his burning city choked the stars. He was a noble seed cast into the filth, the sole survivor of a massacre designed to erase his name from time itself. To the marauding soldiers who left him there, he was nothing more than a corpse. To the spirits of the Altai, he was the final ember of a fire. Then, out of the shifting mists of the jagged peaks, she appeared. She was not a beast of nightmare, but a creature of celestial silver, her thick fur the color of winter storms, and her eyes burning with the golden radiance of Kut, the divine spark of life itself. Asena, the great mother, stepped through the crimson waters, her presence heavy with the weight of a destiny that would soon reshape continents. Instead of the final bite of death, the boy, Asena, did not tear his broken flesh. She licked his wounds with a tongue carrying the salt of the earth and the magic of the sky god, Tengri. She nursed him with the milk of the wild, defying the laws of nature to preserve the last. When the boy grew strong enough, she carried him deep into the heart of the mountains, far into a hidden valley near the Gaochang region, where the air was scented with pine. Deep within the hidden womb of a mountain cave, the miracle of the Ashina began. It was there, sheltered from the prying eyes of the world and the vengeful blades of the Linyi, that Asena bore 10 sons. These were not ordinary children, but the progenitors of a new era, boys born with the shadow of the wolf in their eyes and the strength of the mountains in their bones. They were the bridge between the animal and the divine, a brotherhood of 10 who would grow to lead the 10 original clans of the Turkic people. In that cave, the shame of the massacre was forgotten, replaced by a growing howl that resonated through the valleys. The sons of the wolf learned to hunt, to forge, and to survive, their bodies hardening under the discipline of the wild until they were ready to reclaim the destiny their father almost lost. They were the celestial Turks in waiting, the heirs of the blue wolf, and their story was no longer one of tragedy, but of a terrifying rebirth that would soon shake the foundations of every empire. From the sound of the hammer against the anvil was the only heartbeat the Ashina knew for generations. In the jagged frozen crags of the Altai Mountains, the air was thick with the scent of burning coal and the sharp metallic tang of cooling iron. Here, the descendants of the wolf were kept in the shadows, serving as the smith slaves of the Rouran Khaganate. They were the makers of blades they were forbidden to wield, the forgers of armor they were never meant to wear, forced to labor in the heat of the earth while their masters feasted on the rewards of their toil. Bumin, a man whose muscles were corded like the ancient roots of the mountain larch, and whose skin was the color of seasoned leather from years of exposure to forge fire and steppe wind, stood amidst the dancing sparks. His face was blackened by soot, but his eyes, narrowed against the glare of the furnace, burned with a light that did not come from the embers. He felt the Kut, the divine life force, the celestial mandate of sovereignty, pulsing in his veins like a subterranean river. It was a low, vibrational hum that synchronized with the rhythmic, heavy strike of his hammer. He knew with a certainty that transcended the physical world that the blood of the she-wolf did not flow through his heart so that her children could spend eternity bowing to master. In the year 551 of the Common Era, the tension that had simmered for centuries reached its breaking point. The Rouran ruler, fat with pride and blinded by his own perceived invincibility, looked upon the Ashina and saw only servants, never realizing that the men who forge the sword are the ones who truly own its edge. When Bumin, seeking to elevate his people through the ancient rites of alliance, sent an envoy to ask for the hand of a Rouran princess, the Khagan's response was a jagged shard of ice in the face of destiny. "You are my blacksmith slaves," the message returned, dripping. "How dare you address me with such words of equality?" It was an insult that echoed through the granite valleys of the Altai, reaching the very cave where the 10 sons had once been nurtured by the wolf. Bumin did not erupt with a common man's erratic rage. He burned with the cold, calculated fire of a master smith tempering a blade. He turned back to his forge one last time. But he was no longer making tribute for a cruel master. He was forging the sovereignty of a nation. With his brother Steppe at his side, a man of the saddle and the bow, whose eyes could pierce the thickest morning fog of the Orkhon Valley, Bumin gathered the scattered Turkic clans. He did not offer them the promise of easy gold or stolen land. He offered them their true name, a name that had been whispered. He raised a standard that the world had never seen, yet every man felt the power of it in his marrow. A staff of cedar topped with a snarling head of pure, shimmering gold. It was the likeness of the wolf. It was the two, the sacred banner of the celestial Turks. As the sun rose over the Altai in 552 CE, the hammers were dropped and the heavy bows were strung. The Ashina did not march as a rabble of slaves. They moved as a pack, a coordinated lethal force of iron and spirit that mirrored the strategic hunt of their narrow-eyed ancestors. They struck the Rouran with the force of a mountain landslide, their wolf-head banners glinting like divine fire in the light of the eternal blue sky, the Guk. When the dust of the great battle finally settled, and the Rouran power lay shattered like brittle pig iron upon the stone, Bumin did not merely take a throne. He became the Khagan, the supreme ruler of all who lived under the felt tent and rode across the horizon. He had transformed his people from the makers of steel. Beside him, Steppe looked toward the setting sun, ready to carry the golden wolf standard to the very edges of the known world, toward the borders of Persia and the distant, gilded spires of Byzantium. This was the birth of the first Turkic Khaganate, a dominion born of the forge and blessed by the sky. They were no longer the forgotten sons of a marshland survivor. They were the Ashina, the noble clan, the Iron Khans who held the mandate of Tengri in one hand and the untamable fury of the wolf in the other. Their empire was not built on the vulnerability of stone, but on the unyielding spirit of the nomad and the divine memory of the mother who had saved them from the brink of extinction. They were the masters of their own destiny, under the watchful gaze of the blue wolf. In the deep quiet of the night, when the wind howls through the gaps in the yurt, the old ones still, you see, as the sons of the cave multiplied and the name of the Ashina began to ring across the plains, the wolf transformed. She was no longer just the nursing mother of a hidden valley. She became a celestial phantom, a blue-hued spirit sent by the great sky itself. This is the moment when the legend of the gray wolf shifted from a story of survival to a prophecy of conquest. Imagine, if you will, the legendary Oghuz Khagan. The stories say he was a man of iron, with a chest as broad as a bear's and a spirit that could not be caged. He had united the tribes, but even a king of the earth finds himself standing at the edge of the unknown, staring at horizons that seemed too vast to conquer. One night, as Oghuz looked out over his sleeping camp, a ray of light, pure and terrifying in its brilliance, descended from the eternal blue sky. Out of that celestial pillar stepped a great male wolf, his coat the shimmering gray of a storm cloud, and his eyes burning with a divine intelligence. The creature did not bark or snarl. It simply looked at the Khagan and turned toward the setting sun. Oghuz knew in his marrow that this was no ordinary beast. This was the Bozkurt, the messenger of the heavens, carrying the Kut, the divine mandate to rule and the life force of the nation. "Follow the light," the Khagan commanded, and the earth shook as his massive army of horsemen rose as one, their leather armor creaking in the cold air. For weeks, the wolf led them through terrain that should have claimed their lives. When they reached the towering, ice-choked mountains that seemed to pierce the very stars, the wolf found the hidden, narrow pass that the scouts had missed. When they faced the vast, parched deserts, where the sand swallows the memory of water, the wolf sniffed out the ancient underground springs. The soldiers looked up and saw their golden wolf-head banner, the two, fluttering in the wind, and they felt the wolf's spirit moving through their own veins like a fire. They weren't just men anymore. They were a pack, a singular, unstoppable force of nature. In the heat of the great battles that followed, men swore they saw the ghostly silhouette of the wolf running alongside their horses, its howl drowning out the scream. The wolf was the compass of the soul, a bridge between the mortal dirt of the steppe and the infinite blue of the sky. It taught the people that they were never truly alone in the wilderness, for the same blood that once saved a broken boy in a marsh now led an end. This was the celestial guide, the untamable spirit that whispered to every nomad that the horizon, the sun hung low over the endless sea of grass. A golden coin tossed by Tengri across the celestial vault as Oghuz Khagan stood before his gathered Tumens. He was a man carved from the very bedrock of the Altai, with shoulders as broad as a mountain pass and eyes that mirrored the deep, unforgiving blue of the eternal sky. For years he had unified the scattered tribes, hammering the disparate clans into a single, unbreakable blade of iron. Yet, even a Khagan of such monumental strength knew that mortal steel was not enough to conquer the four corners of the world. He needed the cut, the divine mandate that only the heavens could bestow. It was on a night of silver frost, when the winds of the north whispered of ancient secrets, that the destiny of the As Oghuz sat within his silk-lined yurt, a brilliance unlike any hearth-fire began to seep through the smoke-hole above. It was a pillar of celestial blue light, shimmering with the dust of distant stars, descending directly from the heart of Tengri. From within this radiance, a shape began to coalesce, a creature made of shadow and starlight. It was the gray wolf, the Bozkurt, but it was no longer the nursing mother of the hidden caves. This was the celestial avatar of the hunt. A beast of such terrifying majesty that the very horses, its fur was the color of the morning mist over the steppes, and its eyes burned with a fierce guiding intelligence that spanned generations. Oghuz Khagan did not tremble. He lowered his head in a gesture of profound recognition. The wolf spoke not in the tongue of men, but in a vibration that echoed through his very marrow. It was a command to move, to strike, to lead. When the morning sun finally broke over the horizon, the Khagan emerged from his tent to find the celestial beast waiting at the head of his vanguard. To his warriors, it appeared as a shimmering phantom dancing in the rays of light, a beacon of hope that turned their fear into a cold, lethal resolve. "Forward!" Oghuz commanded, his voice a thunderclap that rolled across the plains. As they marched, the gray wolf remained always a few paces ahead, its paws never truly touching the earth, leading them through treacherous mountain paths and across sun-scorched deserts where no man should have survived. When they encountered the vast armies of their rivals, the wolf did not retreat. It stood upon the highest ridge, silhouetted against the sky, its howl chilling the blood of the enemy, and in every clash of shields and every flight of arrows, the spirit of the Bozkurt moved through the Turkic ranks. It was the tactical brilliance that outflanked the southern empires and the endurance that outlasted the winter sieges. Under the wolf-head banner, Oghuz Khagan saw his empire stretch until the horses grew weary of the distance, yet the wolf never tired. It was the manifestation of the Turkic soul, wild, untamable, and perpetually guided by a higher purpose. This was the moment the Khaganate became more than a kingdom. It became a divine mission, a lineage of predators who looked to the sky and saw not just stars, but the eyes of their ancestor watching over the fold. The light that had birthed the wolf now burned in the hearts of every warrior, a flame of identity that no conqueror could ever truly extinguish. The empires of the silk and the sword eventually crumbled under the weight of centuries, but the spirit of the wolf did not perish with the last of the ancient Khagans. Even as the golden wolf head banners were lowered and the Orkhan inscriptions became weathered by the relentless winds of the steppe, the memory of the Ashina remained etched into the very bones of the Turkic people. It lived on in the smoke of the yurts and the rhythmic thundering of hooves across the Eurasian horizon. When the Turkic tribes found themselves trapped within the jagged, impassable walls of the Iron Mountains, it was the legend of Ergenekon that rekindled their fire. They remembered the wolf, and they remembered their heritage as blacksmiths. They built great bellows and melted the very mountainside to forge a path to freedom, led once more by the gray beast that knew no master. This was the legacy of the wolf. It was never merely a creature of flesh and bone, but a manifestation of the nomad's refusal to be conquered. This primordial force, this divine cut, traveled with the sons of the steppe as they migrated toward the setting sun, carrying the stories of Asena into the high courts of the Seljuks and the shadowed valleys of Anatolia. Through the rise and fall of the Ottomans and into the fire of the early 20th century, the wolf remained a silent sentinel of identity. During the desperate hours of the Turkish War of Independence, the image of the Bozkurt was revived not as a relic of a dead past, but as a living symbol of a people. It reminded a weary nation that they were descended from the survivor in the marsh, the boy who refused to die, and the mother who refused to let him. Today, from the wind-swept plains of Kazakhstan to the bustling streets of Baku and Istanbul, the gray wolf continues to represent a bridge between the ancient celestial sky of Tengri and the modern world. It is a reminder that no matter how far we travel from the Altai Mountains, the instinct for survival and the hunger for freedom remain our birthright. The wolf teaches us that when all seems lost and the tribe is scattered to the winds, there is a path through the mountains if we have the courage to follow the light. The soul of the nomad is untamable, a wild thing that answers only to the call of the terror felt by the enemies of the Ashina was never about the sharpness of their blades, but the depth of their memory. A memory that spans thousands of years and refuses. As long as the wind howls through the mountain passes and the blue sky stretches infinitely above the grass, the legend of the gray wolf will endure, guiding the lost and guarding the spirit of those who dare to be free. The ancient stories still speak to us. Subscribe to hear. Tell us in the comments.